하버드대학교 교수이자 스뮬 창립자이시면서 기술로 소리를 연주하는 아티스트로 유명하신 분입니다. 거왕 교수님이십니다. 큰 박수로 맞이해 주십시오.
Hey everybody, how are you doing? It's wonderful to be back in Seoul, and it's truly an honor to be back at Tech Plus. Today, I want to share with you a story about three things. The first thing is computer, the second thing is music, and the third one is people. And I want to share you at least my version of a story of how these things play together, and also maybe take a glimpse into some possible futures of where music and music making might take us as people with a little help from computers. And people ask me, what is it that I do? And my answer usually is, I don't really know. I don't really know exactly what it is that I'm doing. And I really, to some degree, don't know what I'm doing. But apparently some people, maybe a lot of people, including the New York Times here, think that this is what I'm trying to do, which is to get a lot of people, take their instruments, go into the streets, and play music together. In some ways, that is not far from my goals. I do want to use technology to encourage everyone to make more music, and to also find new ways for people to connect with each other through music. And indeed, as the computer music research field grew, people did just that. They explored new instruments. Here we see Dan Truman, Curtis Bond, and Interface playing with augmented instruments that were a combination of traditional instruments and also computerized ones. Here Dan Truman is playing the bossa. This is a bowed sensor speaker array. It's essentially many of the functional parts of a violin deconstructed and then put back together. And in this way, he explores what a traditional instrument might mean in the context of this new technology. Perry Cook, my advisor at Princeton, he's built many computerized musical controllers in his career. He's still building them. And they really show us what just the lack of limits of where we can go of building new instruments. And I was very fortunate to work with Dan and Perry, Scott Smallwood, and others in building the Princeton Laptop Orchestra. And this is really an attempt to combine traditional orchestras with computers. And when I started as an assistant professor at Stanford, I brought the idea with me to the West Coast of the United States and started the Stanford Laptop Orchestra. Since that time, many other laptop orchestras have came into existence. This is LSU's Laptop Orchestra of Louisiana. This is Virginia Tech's Linux Laptop Orchestra. Two other orchestras of the future. Here we see three more instruments created with the same sensor as the bells. This is an air harp. This is an upright bass. And drums. So that's the laptop orchestra. At least today, there have been more than 200 instruments and pieces created for the laptop orchestra. But all this brings us to this next question. And it's a simple question, but it's one always worth asking, and that is, what is an instrument? What makes something an instrument? I think in the right hands, in the hands of someone who's willing to be expressive, it is an instrument. And if you believe that's an instrument, we might ask, are these things instruments, these mobile phones? And I think it depends. I think it depends on what we do with this technology. And very importantly, in my mind, the operative word is, can the thing be expressive? If we can make something expressive, then I believe it has the beginning and the potential to be a musical instrument. Here's an example. This is ocarina. When I was here last year, I played Ocarina 1. We actually created a new ocarina in the meantime called Ocarina 2. And I'll show you that here. So this is an instrument where you really have to interact physically with it. So blowing into the microphone on the iPhone, the multi-touch screen gives me different pitches. For example. So that was Ocarina 1, and I played that last year. I'm going to show you Ocarina 2. And Ocarina 2 makes it more like a game, but still retains the ocarina nature of things. So in Ocarina 2, you're actually hinted as to how to play the next note, but the note is up to you to play. So, and also you'll hear that there is a harmony added to Ocarina 2, and it accompanies you as you play. And it waits for you. You can play it as fast or as slow as you want. And when I tilt, it gets vibrato. So that's a little bit of Ocarina 2. Let me play a few more songs for you. Here's the theme song from a popular TV show you might recognize. And that's the X-Files, and I'll play one more. Thank you. And this one, the rhythm is a little bit more freeform, but you really have to want to be expressive with this. For example. And that's a bit of Ocarina 2. Thank you. Now, Ocarina isn't just an instrument you can play on your phone. It's also meant to be an instrument that you can actually, in some ways, socialize with others around the world. So in this case, we actually see and listen in on what other people are playing around the world. Here's someone from Germany. And in this way, we can actually look around the world and hear and listen in and see where people are actually using this instrument. This is Louis from Texas. And so when we make instruments on these mobile devices, it affords us kind of a new dimension of exploration. And that's this very personalized, mobile, and social experience. And this brings me to another thought, which is that technology doesn't have to be in our face all the time. Technology, in some sense, should create calm. Technology is something that doesn't have to be in the foreground all the time. We don't have to know about how everything works in order to really make good use of it in our daily lives. And in this case, I think when you look at this, the hope is that you don't think, wow, this is cool technology. No, the hope is that you feel something more human. You feel that, hey, there's someone somewhere out there playing this song on their phone. Or simply, there's just someone somewhere out there playing music. And that's really all the intention is. And the more you can forget about the technology that actually enables this, the better, the more visceral the experience actually is. So, I think I will conclude with just a few thoughts. But first, I want to say, think back to this question we asked of what is an instrument? And I think there are a lot of instruments that we know of today that we can actually rethink and reimagine on the computers that we have today. But then there are also musical instruments, I think, that can be uniquely enabled by computers and mobile devices. For example, new instruments that get thousands of people, strangers around the world, to interact together, maybe eventually millions or billions. What type of instruments or musical interactions would be available then? I think that's a very interesting question. I'll leave you with 3 thoughts. And this thought is more about, I think, the design and things that we've kind of felt as we went through in creating these products, but also in doing this research on new music through computers. One is that we found that there's no substitute for iteration. You have to iterate. You have to do things, and then you have to throw things away. And that, I think this is a theme that's been echoed by many other speakers here at Tech Plus, which is do not fear failure. Second is that occasionally flee from the things that you've gotten comfortable with. Run away from your comfort zone. One example is, this is Roz Savage. She's an ocean rower. She rows a boat across oceans. And she's actually the first woman to row solo, by herself, across the Pacific Ocean. It took her 11 years in management consulting to say, I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't me. I'm going to do something else. And this is what she's doing. This is not where she began her adult life doing. But this is an interest that she followed. And clearly, I don't think this is in anyone's comfort zone. It took her 3 million strokes to actually get from one side of the Pacific to the other side. And she said at any given moment, the only thing she could do is to take one more stroke. When you add it up, she crossed the Pacific on a rowboat. And I think for me, that tells us something. And it shows that if we don't know or think that a thing is impossible, then it often isn't. But lastly, to balance with fleeing from the comfort zone is to follow your interests. I began this talk talking about my family and how they encouraged me to do just this. And I think this, above all, is the one thing that I think have helped me all my life so far. And I believe this is something that I'm going to continue to try to do. And this is something I encourage everyone to actually do. So with that, I want to thank you very much, and 감사합니다.